Somehow it's taken us 20 years of podcasting to get to Jim Steranko's fabled run on Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. But in the early issues, Steranko isn't quite Steranko yet. There's lots of action and it's exciting, but don't dare think about it too much because the seat of the pants plotting is all over the map, and the anatomy drawing sometimes leaves something to be desired. Still, as you go issue by issue, you start to see new ideas coming to him as he starts to innovate with Marvel's Jack Kirby house style. This week, Kumar and I discuss the Fury stories in Strange Tales 154 to 163. First, I want to thank our patrons for helping to keep the show going. You can pitch in by pledging at least $2 a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim.
And this is Kumar.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Kumar in Melbourne. Greetings.
Hello.
So recently I said, we've been doing this podcast for 20 years and we've never talked about Jim Steranko's Nick Fury stuff. And so I thought that we should address that. So it starts out in Strange Tales, and then moves to Nick Fury's own title. And I realized there are a lot of different directions to go here. So first let's talk about Strange Tales. Because Strange Tales, this history of Strange Tales is kind of convoluted. I mean, just up to this point. So, of course, it started out 1951. It was a kind of horror book. It was competing with EC. It's pre-Comics Code. I saw that an issue of it showed up at the congressional hearings about scary comic books. And then, of course, they had to tone it down after 54 when the code came in. When Jack Kirby came back for his second stint at Marvel in 59, he was doing like monster stories, including Fin Fang Foom, who later retroactively got included in the Marvel universe. Then in 62, it became a Johnny Storm solo series.
Oh, okay, didn't know that.
Weirdly enough, and then there were backup features that had monsters. And eventually it became the Torch and the Thing, side by side with some other backup story, I think. Then became a Torch Thing story and a Doctor Strange story. And this is, Lee and Ditko, Doctor Strange. And the Torch and Thing stories, Kirby stopped drawing them after a while. He was still doing covers. But he wasn't doing interiors of the book until 65, when they replaced the Torch and Thing stories with Nick Fury stories.
Okay.
Now, the Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos book was running from starting in 63 all the way to 1981. I didn't realize how long that book was coming out. But, of course, now, because of the James Bond spy craze, they take an existing character, Nick Fury, in the present and make him a spy.
Very vaguely a spy, I would say.
Yeah.
I would say this is, there's a threadbare connection to, they even mention James Bond, they mention Flint, but this is just straight superhero nonsense.
Well, but they've got an equivalent to Q, presenting him with gadgets.
Sure. Yes, but that's it. That's what I mean. That's about it. The thing you didn't mention about Strange Tales is the reason Strange Tales and Tales of Suspense were anthology titles with like Thor and Iron Man is because they were being distributed by DC. And DC
the owner of DC. Or
the number of titles they were allowed to have on the shelves. Yeah. So they had to double up.
Right. They could only have 8 titles.
Yeah.
At the time. So, like I mentioned before we started here, this subject got me digging into my library of books that have been discussed on Deconstructing Comics. And I'm looking at Marvel Comics: The Untold Story by Sean Howe, which, by the way, back in November, I reran my 2014 interview with him. So, listeners, if you haven't listened to that, you should. And you should also read this book. I feel like I need to reread it if I had time. But, yeah, one of the things I was looking up was the distribution stuff. Yeah, I was kind of thinking we'd do this next time, but
okay, it's all right. We'll save it for next.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and Nick is wearing a suit and tie like Bond.
Sometimes.
Well, yeah. So it changes, especially once.
It's more like
once Steranko comes on.
It's like his secret identity. You know, Nick Fury's is like his superhero costume, and this is just a thing he wears sometimes. He barely wears it. It's maybe this first chapter, which Steranko didn't even write. Yeah,
so looking at this book, S.H.I.E.L.D. by Steranko, the complete collection, it starts with Strange Tales 151, dated December 1966, and the first few stories, it's still Stan who's scripting, and Steranko is only inking Kirby. But within a few issues, Kirby's gone, Steranko is drawing, and then he's also writing.
The first chapter we looked at, which is 153, Beware the Deadly Dreadnought, says, edited by Stan Lee, scripted by Roy Thomas, and plotted and drawn by Jim Steranko.
Yeah.
Now, I want to say that's an interesting credit to me, because edited by Stan Lee is basically what he did on Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, but he considered himself to be the writer of those stories. But
right. Well, he was writing the script, but yeah, he wasn't really writing the story.
Yeah, but here he's calling himself an editor. I don't know what he considered the difference. I mean, where he drew those lines.
Well, he's not scripting anymore. He's got on that issue Roy Thomas scripting.
Right. Okay.
So he's just like looking it over and putting in footnotes that I could only imagine were probably annoying to Steranko.
There is one really good one in there which we might talk about. But
So yeah, I wanted to read. This is a little long, but I think it's worth it. Okay. So from Sean Howe's book about Steranko coming into Marvel. Now, so he's met with, at this point, Joe Simon is at Harvey, and it's 66, and Batman has set off the superhero craze, and Harvey is trying to start a line of superhero comics.
Okay,
and so Steranko comes to Simon at Harvey, and so. The artist's name was Jim Steranko, and he was the 27-year-old art director at a Shillington, Pennsylvania ad agency. If there weren't a trail of newspaper clippings to confirm it, one would never believe what Steranko had packed into his early years. He was born into poverty with a father who struggled to support his family by gathering bootleg coal, digging homemade mines, and taking serious risks in unsafe rickety shafts. The young Steranko, obsessed with the danger and claustrophobia of his father's daily routine, dedicated himself to the art of escape. By the age of 16, he was putting on Houdini-like public performances, showing off to local police that he could escape from their jails. He also slipped out of straitjackets, leg irons, handcuffs, safes, and vaults. Which, by the way, Howe doesn't mention this, but I found that Mark Evanier has said that this background of Steranko was an inspiration to Kirby to do Mr. Miracle.
I've heard that.
Other performances were less thrilling to the local authorities. The teenage Steranko began stealing an arsenal's worth of guns and a small parking lot's worth of motor vehicles. In February 1956, Steranko and a partner were arrested for the thefts committed throughout eastern Pennsylvania of 25 cars and 2 trucks. He was careful to avoid criminal activity in his hometown. None of these things we did were done in Reading, maybe 1 or 2. I stole a submachine gun in Reading, but that was all, quoting him. They burglarized gas stations, but a sole-thwarted attempt at armed robbery. The victim sized up Steranko, realized he wouldn't shoot the gun, and refused to hand over any money, showed the limits of his transgressive inclinations. By the early 60s, Steranko had moved on to playing rock and roll guitar. His band shared bills with Bill Haley and his Comets.
card tricks, he was nationally ranked and published a book, and fire eating before he finally settled into advertising. Through it all, Steranko found constant inspiration in comic books, but for once it seemed like instant mastery of a craft was beyond his grasp. He'd been turned away by Marvel in the summer of 1965, and now he regaled Simon with silly named heroes like Spy-Man and Magic Master. Steranko not only wrote the scripts and designed the characters, he also included elaborate diagrams that delineated the heroes' powers, but Simon told him that he didn't have the proper artistic skills to draw the stories, and so the prodigy went across town to the very company that Simon had hired him to challenge, which, of course, is Marvel.
It's interesting that he says that Steranko just couldn't do comics right out of the gate, because I think it's really true. I think these stories are pretty awful for the most part, and the art is clumsy. It takes a long time. It's just full of Lee and or Kirby and Ditko swipes. And the figures are very stiff and awkward. It takes a long time before some sort of change starts to happen. But even then, I think that like all the ideas in here and the plotting is really crazy, and he didn't seem to know what he was doing, despite the fact that he was a master thief and escape artist and all that other stuff.
I don't know. I enjoyed these stories. I thought they were kind of exciting. The Lee stuff as well as the Steranko stuff.
Right. Well, I guess as we go through them a little bit, I can talk about all the issues I had with them.
Okay.
But like the first Roy Thomas story, maybe did Thomas script more than one? I think he did a couple. But anyway,
it was just one.
Okay. Well, coming in, it was like it was a hard read. Like this first page one of this story, the title page of Beware the Deadly Dreadnought, has Nick Fury, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then tells you it means Supreme Headquarters, International Espionage Law Enforcement Division. Then there's all this tons of text. We also learned there's this computer called AutoFact, which also is an acronym of Analytical Unit for Tabulation of Origin Factors and Computation. And then we learn all about what it does, and that there's a spy in S.H.I.E.L.D., and also there's editorial intrusions by Kirby or by Stan Lee as usual.
Yeah, it's a very busy splash page, that's for sure.
It's very busy, and it's interesting. Those intrusions are, I didn't mind them in the other books, but they bothered me here. And I'll tell you too, I found a lot of there's a lot of pleasure I get from Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and Fantastic Four as an adult. But for this, I found there was less somehow. And I think part of the problem was I felt like it was all retreads. Like I felt like this constant snappy dialogue from Nick Fury to me just sounded like Spider-Man or Ben Grimm.
Yeah, or Stan Lee.
Or Stan Lee. And then another character shows up who's like this Zach Brannigan, Flash Gordon type right at the very end. And he's the same. So when him and Nick Fury are in a fight side by side against the bad guys, it's just both of them nonstop quipping. And I was like, okay, I've kind of had enough of this. It was kind of exhausting me.
I did kind of feel like the ironic type of Stan Lee joking was getting kind of tired.
And also, like, how many times is Nick Fury presumed dead by the bad guys? I would say every story, sometimes more than once in a story.
Yeah.
So I would say in the 10 issues we read, maybe 12 times the bad guys presume Nick Fury is dead, and somehow, through some complicated mechanism, he's managed to escape.
Yeah, well, I mean, in this Hydra story that Stan started and Steranko wraps up, I think, the leader of Hydra is multiple times, thinks that Fury is dead. Usually you only do that once per story, but
yes. And I mean, here's another thing that really, I mean, the first half of this I was kind of like, okay, so we've got this enemy called Hydra, this organization, this huge criminal organization, which I guess is like, what was it called in the James Bond movies? SMERSH or something like that, or no, that was I can't remember, but all these agent shows had a acronym enemy organization.
Yeah, and Get Smart, it was Chaos.
That's right, Chaos. I think there was one version of Bond was SMERSH, but that was because they lost. They couldn't use the other one, which I can't remember. Anyway, so we've got this giant organization called Hydra. They wear these superhero costumes, and the thugs, the minions, all have numbers. They're like number 12, number 10. And they have this supreme leader who turns out to be Baron Strucker from World War II.
Oh, by the way, Spectre.
Spectre, thank you.
Yeah.
Spectre, of course. And Strucker's always referred to as like your supreme eminence or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, finally, at the end of this run of 6 or 7 issues, Nick Fury defeats Hydra completely.
Mm-hmm.
Then, starting the next arc, we get this new villain that shows up. It turns out to be...
Yeah, not such a new villain, actually, but...
No, it's the Claw.
The Yellow Claw. Yeah,
Yellow
very
Claw.
unfortunate Yellow Peril.
Okay, well, here we go. We've got a
villain, clone of Ming the Merciless.
Right. We've got another foreign villain who is constantly referred to as Your Eminence and Your Highness and things like that. He's also a repeat villain. He's not a new villain.
Yeah, he's from the 50s.
He's got an organization, and all of them have numbers. In fact, when his minions in their costumes showed up, they looked like the same costumes. And I was like, oh, are these the same guys? And then they started referring to each other as number 12, number 14. I was like, wait a second. Are these the same guys? No, it's just Steranko didn't have a new idea. He was just absolutely
14A and 14B.
Just absolutely just set up all the same stuff. Now they think Nick is dead again. Now he's alive again. It's the same thing, slightly different villains. And it drove me slightly crazy. And like that second, when we started with the Yellow Claw stuff, I was kind of got to skimming point. Like I was like, okay, I get it. It's the same thing again and again. And like I said, I don't feel like the spy stuff was really... It was so paper thin when it appeared. Most of it was really superhero hijinks, I think. Like all the costumes and the fact that he had to draw, they had a mandate to draw like Kirby, and he was swiping Kirby poses.
Mm-hmm.
And also I noticed there's a hilarious Wally Wood swipe, because there's a scene where you're on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, which is an orb around Earth, and they're on the hull. And you can see the Earth in the distance, and they're way out in space.
Yeah, I don't know how you take what's basically a giant helicopter out into orbit. I don't think that works. Way out.
They're like in lunar orbit.
Yeah.
I think basically Steranko has swiped a Wally Wood drawing, and he's placed the planet in the same position. I think that's what's happened.
Yeah, well, repeatedly you see that there are like stars behind them, and the Earth, like, we can very easily see the curvature of the Earth below them.
Yeah. So all that kind of stuff, I just felt like it was really derivative.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept wanting to get to later stuff, because you start to see bits and pieces. Sometimes it seems like he's cheating his way out of sticking to the Kirby template.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets creative sometimes.
Yeah, well, there was a quote from Roy Thomas. I don't remember was this in Wikipedia? He said, Jim's legacy to Marvel was demonstrating that there were ways in which the Kirby style could be mutated, and many artists went off increasingly in their own directions after that.
Right.
And I wrote down here, what we're doing this time is up through Strange Tales 163, and in a later episode, we're planning to finish the Strange Tales run and talk about the Nick Fury book itself. But I was noting some kind of signpost along the way. So in 156, for the first time, we see Fury in the black jumpsuit that became his look for decades, until the Samuel L. Jackson era. So not wearing a suit and tie anymore. 159, so in the new story that he starts after the Hydra story is done, suddenly there are occasional wordless panels. No dialogue, no narration, no sound effects, just the art speaking for itself. And that you see more and more of that as you go. But, you never saw a Stan Lee comic never, ever had such a thing.
Yeah.
You got to have words, as many words as possible. And in general, I thought once Steranko gets going, there are, on average, I think, fewer words on a page. I mean, if you look back at the Lee stuff, it's just words everywhere. Yeah. I mean, there are some wordy pages in Steranko, but gradually the words are being pulled back. Then 160, the splash page shows this like confidential file that's doubling as a splash page, and it's got the credits on it and everything. And there's some kind of photo-looking things. He's kind of taking a Kirby thing with the collages.
Yeah.
Also, I thought that page was interesting because the background is just white. In the past, I would have expected to see like a desktop or something behind it, but it's just a white background.
Right. No, and I like the splash pages because like he goes down to Hydra base and we get a full page splash that's really interesting drawing of this base. And there's at some stage Fury is using like X-ray contact lenses, and there's a really cool X-ray effect.
The white and black stripes.
That kind of stuff was really good. It's creeping in though. It's like it's a rare treat when that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, he's gradually hitting on his own ideas.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But it's a slow climb at this stage.
Coming up, does Fury really act like a spy or a superhero? Steranko's comics innovations and more.
Waxy Buildup, a podcast covering the earliest recordings from the wax cylinders of the 1880s to the discs of the 1920s, plus the latest recordings to enter the pop chart 100 years ago this week. Heard exclusively at ftmelo.podbean.com.
Tuesdays on the Radio Troller Entertainment Podcast channel.
To delight those who would have melody or be amused.
If you're a Batman 66 viewer, you're familiar with the recap that opens the second part of an arc. As Paul and I have examined first draft scripts, we've noticed that these are often completely rewritten from draft script to final. But why was this the case? This month on our Patreon show Bat Bits, we'll try to answer that and also welcome novelist Nancy Northcott back to our Bat podcasting world to discuss the portrayal of women in Batman Season 3. Get access to Bat Bits by supporting our Patreon at $2 a month. At $4 a month, you also get our monthly show Silver Age Batman, where we're looking at many of the wacky Batman stories from the 50s. This month, Patrick and I look at a significant story that was retconned in the 80s, Detective Comics 226, in which it's revealed that the original Robin was one Bruce Wayne. Also at the $4 level, you can still access our past series that covered the first 50 issues of Amazing Spider-Man and more. Follow our Patreon for free and get access to the first 2 episodes of both Bat Bits and Silver Age Batman. Check it out at patreon.com/deconcomics, and thanks for your support.
And I had a lot of another thing about the superhero stuff is I guess because they're copying James Bond. Mm-hmm. But he's always going off on these missions to fight supervillains by himself. He's not like a secret agent who's going undercover. He's in this uniform. He's like, oh, I found out where the villains are. And he goes into their base by himself. He's got a whole organization in this giant helicopter.
Yeah.
He almost never is anyone else along on these missions with him. This is why another thing that, strikes me as being very... more superhero-like than spy-like. Mm-hmm. And there's an early chapter where he meets his Q type who gives his weapons. Mm-hmm. And it's hilarious because he immediately uses every one of those weapons in this 12-page story. Mm-hmm. He's got some sort of buttons on his shirt that have oxygen for 5 minutes. He's got some sort of cufflinks that are anti-electromagnets or something. Every single thing ends up getting used immediately.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's a bit clumsy about the spy stuff. It's just oh, we're supposed to have gadgets, and he has gadgets and he immediately uses them. The one I did like was there's a gag at the end when Fury says to the Q-type guy, he says, oh, what does the belt do? And the guy says, it holds up your pants. And it's just a gag like that. But actually, several chapters later, he uses his belt to grab this death claw, this gauntlet off of Baron Strucker's hand.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a clever callback. I don't know if he actually knew that he had a clever callback there or planned it that way. But it was very funny that the one thing that wasn't supposed to do anything actually was the thing that saved the day in the end.
Another thing that you start seeing when he's doing the art is these, like, you'd see like 4 panels that are all from the same point of view and showing, this kind of, I had to dig out Understanding Comics here. That's the other book that I'm calling back to see what McLeod calls it. I'm not sure if it's moment to moment or action to action, but something like that. And, you're seeing the exact same camera view, but
yes,
in time moving a little bit forward. But I don't think I ever saw Kirby do that either.
No, but who did do it was Bernie Krigstein, and I think that's where Steranko is getting it from.
Okay,
that's my guess. There's certain panels. The one where that Baroness or whatever her name is walking away.
Yeah,
and it's like 4 panels step by step. That absolutely he swiped that from Krigstein. I'm almost positive.
Now there's one of those where it didn't quite work for me because it's where Fury is sleeping in this room that has a bunch of file cabinets or something in it, and behind him, as he's lying down, you see these 2 Hydra guys come in through like an air vent, and Fury's face keeps getting closer and closer to us, but the file cabinets behind him stay the same distance away.
Yeah.
So I guess Fury's bed is on wheels, I guess.
Maybe it's a vertigo effect, like, Hitchcock where the camera's zooming in and pulling out at the same time or something like that.
I guess.
By the way, the security on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier is terrible.
Oh, yeah.
They've got the most incredible technology, all the sort of X-rays and all sorts of stuff that there's an incredible page 2 of this, that one page I described where we get all these acronyms and all this plot. And then the next page, we get one of those cutaway profile maps of the helicarrier with all the bits. There's like a atomic warhead in there and people just sneak on board. Like, it's not unusual.
Yeah, or the Dreadnought robot is like launched up at the helicarrier and gets in no problem.
Yeah, this guy just like puts on they've got fake faces. They've got Mission Impossible type fake faces. And they've got very poor background checks on these people that coming on board, because people come on wearing these Mission Impossible masks and then rip them off later on. And it turns out to be a bad guy. It happens regularly. But luckily for us, they always yell "Hail Hydra" before they execute their plan. They just can't. They have a compulsion.
Yeah. Cut off one arm and 2 take its place.
Yes.
It shows up multiple times in there.
Yes, before they execute, which was a bit crazy to me. Yes. Also, another thing about these plots, and I guess maybe it is because they're based on spy movies, is sometimes I couldn't really tell what was going on, like what was the goal of the bad guy. So, for example, Baron Strucker has this big plague bomb, which is they're gonna put his the former leader of Hydra's daughter on trial, and if she's found guilty, they're gonna release this plague bomb.
What do you mean if?
Yeah. Okay. So first,
that's what they say if, but it's going to be when.
First of all, it's not clear to me what she's on trial for. Is it for betraying Hydra or something like that? I don't know. I don't think he says clearly, we're going to put you on trial for betraying Hydra. If we find you guilty, we're going to release this plague bomb. Also, he said that their goal was to rule the world. But does that mean the world is going to be only populated by the people in the Hydra base because everyone else is going to be dead? How does this work?
Yeah, if that's not going to be very hard to rule the world if everybody else is dead.
Yes, but there's no world to rule if there's only like 100 Hydra agents. Maybe is the entire population of the planet.
Yeah, then you're just taking over by default because there's nobody left to subjugate.
Yeah. Very. I found the plans of these people, and also sometimes the plots would jump around. Like in the Yellow Claw storyline, they get some clue that the AIM is the organization in this case. AIM has some super weapon, and Nick Fury goes and that other guy, that Zach Brannigan type, go and intercept these AIM agents, and then they come back to base and they've got this dragon figurine. And I'm like, did we know they were going to get this, or what?
Yeah,
it just seemed like magically
there was no reference to it until suddenly we got a full page panel of it.
That's right. And then they find out that this figurine reveals the name of all these scientists that are working on this super weapon. Okay, I have a bunch, and then somehow the Yellow Claw is able to magically appear and take like through a portal and teleport away this.
Yeah, you
dragon.
Never saw that happen in James Bond.
No, right. Which turns out to be a fake. It turns out that's a fake dragon. Nick Fury's got the real dragon. And when he opens the real dragon, he finds that it's actually got the names of these scientists on. Okay, bunch of questions. Why did AIM code the names of a bunch of scientists into this figurine? Why did they do that? They know the names of the scientists. Why do they need to encode them into this thing? That's never revealed. Also, the Yellow Claw knows who all the scientists are, even though he only got a fake one. How did that happen? The plots are just all over the place. Yeah. I guess but I mean, the thing is, this is true of a lot of like James Bond movies too. If you watch them and you pull at threads, you're like, wait a second, how did that guy know that he was over there? Or how did this guy know to be there at that time? Or why did this happen? And it's very similar here. He's just throwing these, I guess, what he considers espionage points, because it's a bit like the Maltese Falcon, this dragon figurine. He's throwing these kinds of things at the plot, but he hasn't really thought through any of it. It was nonstop. It was really breathless, like reading these stories. I'll give him that. There was no downtime.
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously, he wasn't thinking them through either, because it's like, well, how did Nick? There's no revelation that Nick was trying to get this figurine, or why the fake one also has the names why would the one Nick made as a copy would reveal the names to. It's all really crazy, you know. And then Yellow Claw shows up to kill the last scientist. I mean, Nick Fury is tracking down every scientist. Everyone is getting killed, is dead before he gets there. Finally, Yellow Claw approaches the last scientist, and he's putting the finishing touches on this gun, this super weapon. Yellow Claw takes a weapon and is about to kill the scientist. Scientist pulls off his Mission Impossible mask. It turns out it's actually Nick Fury. Why did Nick finish assembling the gun for the Yellow Claw? Like, don't give him the gun, Nick.
Yeah,
stuff like this was happening.
He didn't want to blow his cover, but then he blew his own cover 30 seconds later.
Yeah, I guess that was it.
So you're talking about poor security, and another kind of weird thing, as I'm just flipping through it here, in 159, the first issue of the Yellow Claw story, there's a barber shop where you sit in the chair and it takes you down through the floor into the like headquarters, and all the barbers are completely knowledgeable about it and they know who Nick Fury is.
They're all agents.
I guess.
I don't think they're real barbers. I think they're S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who.
Well, but I mean, it seems like he actually gets barber services from them, but I don't know. But you know, it's not very secure.
Yes.
And what happens if somebody who some civilian just happens to walk in for a haircut? And they accidentally hit the lever that puts the chair through the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, where am I? Oh, what are all these spies doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I noticed that happens a lot is, much like William Shatner in Star Trek, Nick Fury's shirt will get ripped off in no time. And sometimes he'll go for 20 pages without a shirt on. But he does talk about how he's getting old. Like, there's a few mentions of it's been years since the war, and he's got gray temples now. But he's still running around with his shirt off half the time.
Yeah, boy, has he been working out. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe that's a James Bond thing too, I guess. I loved his apartment. I mean, we slow down for 1 second where it seems like they have no mission, and Nick Fury goes back to his apartment, and you can really see Steranko's advertising background.
Total 60s bachelor pad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that panel has surprisingly few word balloons in it.
Yeah, that's sometimes he would do cool stuff like that. But it also makes me wonder why he left advertising. But usually people leave comics to get into advertising because there's no money in comics and there's lots of money in advertising. I wonder what the story was there.
Well, I think sometimes it's just that they really like comics and they want to do comics even though it doesn't really pay the bills. But, they've got their backup, the job that's actually making them a lot of money. And they like, Charles Soule is a lawyer, but he also writes comics.
Right. I found the footnote that I was mentioning at the beginning. So it's on the edition I've got is page 101, but
which
Fury
issue
Instructor. Is it? Let me find the story title. It's Final Encounter. I don't know what issue.
Okay, that's 158.
Yeah. Okay, so that's page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, page 10. So Nick Fury is fighting Baron Strucker topless. They're both topless. And then Nick Fury jumps through a window. And the caption by Steranko says, "Then with astonishing speed, the desperate figure takes the only course of action open and crashes through a silicon screen into an alpha particle reactor cube." And then there's a footnote from Stan Lee, which says, "What'd he say?" Stumped Stan. Which I imagine Steranko, I don't know, maybe he took his caption seriously. If he did, he would be pretty pissed off with this footnote from Stan. Otherwise, it's weird the way Stan pulls you out with these footnotes from time to time.
By the way, I'm looking at this digitally. It's of course recolored, and some of the narration boxes are colored in this dark red that makes them really difficult to read.
Yeah, bad choice. The other thing that struck me while I was reading this is we talk about how the Marvel books were more realistic than the DC books, and that's why they were becoming more popular. But the amount of quips, as we talked about, and the amount of interjections, these intrusions, these editorial intrusions by Stan Lee actually make it less realistic, I think. I think this was so far from real. It was so impossible, these stories, that I really don't follow the argument. I don't think it holds water, that argument that Marvel comics were more realistic. I think this is just as ridiculous as any giant typewriter in the Batcave or Superman smashing a planet in two with his head. But I will say there's certain things in here, like there's an invisible car, which later showed up in a James Bond movie. I would say the whole Hydra versus S.H.I.E.L.D. thing is very much what the 80s version of G.I. Joe was. I really felt like I was reading a G.I. Joe comic with G.I. Joe versus Cobra. And there's even the G.I. Joe has a Baroness in it as well. Here it's a Countess, I think she is. I really think maybe Larry Hama was influenced by these comics when he was writing those. I love the ESP division. Very unspy-like, but it was. It's a bit like. That seems to have. Judge Dredd has an ESP division. Maybe there was a bit of influence there. Although there was Philip K. Dick's Minority Report was written in like the mid '50s. So maybe Steranko got the idea from there. But that was a wild concept. that I thought was really cool. But again, very not spy-like. They weren't. I don't think they were trying. When AIM comes in and they look like the Eternals, like these wild superhero costumes that these people are showing up in. It was just like, it's crazy to call this a spy story at all.
Well, I guess. That first Yellow Claw chapter, it is called Spy School. So I guess they're
and then he goes there and fights Captain America.
And then Cap shows up and helps Nick in some of these chapters.
And then the Fantastic Four shows up, and we get cameos from Spider-Man and Thor.
It's Marvel. They know which side their bread's buttered on.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were talking about the art. What really bugged me was some of his anatomy, especially with guys with their shirts off. Because it just didn't look right in some of the panels. Like, there's a cover on issue 159, and Nick's head looks too small for his body.
Yeah.
His hands are like bigger than his head.
Oh yeah. I think even when their shirts are on, I mean his anatomy is very awkward. His draftsmanship is awkward. It's the layouts. The layouts are where the pleasure is when he starts opening up. Mm-hmm. And when he comes up with ideas like the X-rays and the full page splashes. But definitely he has trouble with things. Meanwhile, I mean, 10 years after this, when he does that like hard-boiled crime novel where he did the illustrations. I think it was called, what was it called? But anyway, then he becomes kind of an amazing draftsman for that kind of stuff. But he's nowhere near that here. Even when he starts getting good, he's still swiping Wally Wood, Bernie Krigstein. There's still Kirby and Ditko swipes in some of these panels.
Well, as you said, I mean, Kirby was the house style at the time, and so nobody at Marvel would have had a problem with copying Kirby. I noticed that like Steranko's lines are often quite thin and sharp, and I kind of liked that. And it's a kind of a contrast to Kirby, where it seems just a little bit fuzzier.
Right. But you notice sometimes he's like, how he draws that very thick like line to delineate muscle is like he swiped that from Kirby, like on chests or biceps or things like that sometimes, especially earlier on. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm just flipping through this, and there's a sequence where the AIM agents capture Nick Fury, and to kill him, they put this super high-tech manacles on him, so his arms are tied behind his back. But it's like this science fiction rig from outer space, and then they drown him. They throw him in the water. Why not just shoot the guy in the head? It was really
it's the Batman 66 problem. You know,
it's not even that.
There has to be a way for him to escape.
It's Goldfinger. You tie James Bond down with a laser beam that's slowly going up between his legs, and then you leave the room.
Yeah, of course.
So we put this very high-tech, like almost Tony Stark level or Reed Richards level technology manacles, just not even just a straitjacket, some very high-tech thing, and then throw him in the water. Absolutely crazy.
You've got a gun. You can end him.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I want to talk about also Yellow Claw a little bit.
So I guess that there was a Yellow Claw title in the 50s.
Right.
And Jimmy Woo was in it too. And that I didn't. Yes, I knew Jimmy Woo went back to the 50s, but I didn't realize that he had appeared again before Agents of Atlas in the 21st century. But he was in this in some of the story, although they didn't give him a lot to do. He was just kind of there. And then I saw that he was also in Marvel's Godzilla title in the 70s.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, Yellow Claw at the end of this calls Fury-san. And I was like, oh boy. Like, come on. We get this
even though he looks more Chinese than Japanese.
Yeah, this is really bothered me. But I will say, like, when Jimmy Woo showed up, I didn't know any of the backstory that he was an existing character, but I thought, oh, this is interesting. They describe him as a top FBI agent. Mm-hmm. And then we learned that the villain of the storyline is Yellow Claw, and that was disappointing. I thought we were just going to have an Asian FBI agent. But the reason is because we have an Asian villain. That's the reality of it, which is disappointing because it seemed like it was progressive for 20 pages there. That some forward thinking was happening, but actually it was he was just there because the plot allowed him to be there.
And I imagine this was the same idea with Godzilla, because Godzilla comes from Japan. Exactly. So let's throw in
must be Japanese.
An Asian agent.
Yeah. Also, he shows, by the way, this also was plotted crazily, this whole Yellow Claw storyline, because Captain America shows up and he tells Nick Fury, hey, we found out who's behind that blackout that happened last year. Then we get like 2 or 3 chapters that are a flashback to this blackout, and them, Fury and Captain America, fighting these AIM agents in the Statue of Liberty. And then it's revealed at the end that the blackout was caused by Captain America himself on purpose, or by Reed Richards for some sort of power surge. I don't remember what the reason was, but it was done by the superheroes. So why would Captain America say, we figured out who's behind it? You did it. Like, you can tell that he's plotting these 12-page stories on the fly. Like, he hasn't thought them out. He's like got this big reveal that, it was caused by the Yellow Claw. No, they don't know it's the Yellow Claw. And in fact, bizarrely, Yellow Claw is watching this conversation through some sort of monitor. Why? Is he monitoring every conversation Jimmy Woo has all the time? And then he's like, oh, now I can get my revenge. How did he know they were having this conversation? It's so seat of your pants plotting, kids plotting. It's real kids comics kind of stuff. That it's not clear at all why a year has passed or why all that stuff had to be a flashback or anything like that. It's very, very strange. It's like Steranko's going in there going, okay, now this time this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Each chapter almost forgets what happened the previous chapter. It's really chaotic. I found.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's. I guess, you just can't think about it too much. I mean, there's a lot of action and it's exciting, but the logic is often flawed.
Yeah, he fights an octopus.
Yeah, certainly does. Okay, so I think we've covered this. So in a few weeks, probably we'll be talking about the rest of Steranko's run on Nick Fury.
Yeah.
The stories we discussed are currently available in the collection Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Masterworks Volume 2, published by Marvel. Follow us on Blue Sky at Decon Comics. Join our Facebook page or the more active group. Listen to our audio-only videos on YouTube. All of those are linked from deconstructingcomics.com, as is our voicemail. You can communicate with us via social media or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. And of course, we'd love it if you shared episodes with your friends and left us a review in Apple Podcasts or other podcast outlets. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. The music backing the promotion of our Patreon is Change by Jazar. Unfortunately, we've lost another member of our comics community. Creator Sam Keith passed away March 15th. As it happens, we once again have an appropriate flashback episode to share with you. In 2012, Kumar and Dana discussed Keith's series The Max, and we'll re-present that episode here next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.